Sesame Street is a long-running American children's television series created by Joan Ganz Cooney and Lloyd Morissette. The program is known for its educational content, and images communicated through the use of Jim.Henderson's Muppets, animation, short films, humor, and cultural references. The series premiered on November 10, 1969, to positive reviews, some controversy, and high viewership. It has aired on the U.S.'s national public television provider since its debut, with its first run moving to premium channel HBO on January 16, 2016. The show has undergone significant changes throughout its history. The format of Sesame Street consists of a combination of commercial television production elements and techniques which have evolved to reflect the changes in American culture and the audience's viewing habits. With the creation of Sesame Street, producers and writers of a children's television show used, for the first time, educational goals and a curriculum to shape its content. It was also the first time a show's educational effects were studied. Shortly after creating Sesame Street, its producers developed what came to be called the CTW model, a system of television show planning, production, and evaluation based on collaborations between producers, writers, educators, and researchers. The show was initially funded by government and private foundations but has become somewhat self-supporting due to revenues from licensing arrangements, international sales, and other media. By 2006, there were independently produced versions, or co-productions, of Sesame Street broadcast in 20 countries. In 2001 there were over 120 million viewers of various international versions of Sesame Street, and by the show's 40th anniversary in 2009, it was broadcast in more than 140 countries. By its 40th anniversary in 2009, Sesame Street was the 15th highest-rated children's television show in the United States. A 1996 survey found that 95% of all American preschoolers had watched the show by the time they were 3 years old. In 2008, it was estimated that 77 million Americans had watched the series as children. As of 2014, Sesame Street has won 159 Emmy Awards and 8 Grammy Awards, more than any other children's show. History. Sesame Street was conceived in 1966 during discussions between television producer Joan Ganz Cooney and Carnegie Foundation Vice President Lloyd Morissette. Their goal was to create a children's television show that would master the addictive qualities of television and do something good with them, such as helping young children prepare for school. After 2 years of research, the newly formed Children's Television Workshop received a combined grant of $8 million from the Carnegie Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and the U.S. federal government to create and produce a new children's television show. The program premiered on public television stations on November 10, 1969. It was the first preschool educational television program to base its contents and production values on laboratory and formative research. Initial responses to the show included adulatory reviews, some controversy, and high ratings. By its 40th anniversary in 2009, Sesame Street was broadcast in over 120 countries, and 20 international versions had been produced. I've always said of our original team that developed and produced Sesame Street, collectively, we were a genius. Sesame Street created Joan Ganz Cooney. Sesame Street has evolved from its initial inception. According to writer Michael Davis, by the mid-1970s the show had become an American institution. The cast and crew expanded during this time, with emphasis on the hiring of women crew members and the addition of minorities to the cast. The show's success continued into the 1980s. In 1981, when the federal government withdrew its funding, CTW turned to, and expanded, other revenue sources, including its magazine division, book royalties, product licensing, and foreign broadcast income. Sesame Street's curriculum has expanded to include more effective topics such as relationships, ethics, and emotions. Many of the show's storylines were taken from the experiences of its writing staff, cast, and crew, most notably the 1982 death of Wally, who played Mr. Hooper, and the marriage of Louis and Maria in 1988. In recent years, Sesame Street has faced societal and economic challenges, including changes in viewing habits of young children, competition from other shows, the development of cable television, and a drop in ratings. After the turn of the 21st century, Sesame Street made major structural changes. For example, starting in 2002, its format became more narrative and included ongoing storylines. After its 30th anniversary in 1999 and due to the popularity of the Muppet Elmo, the show also incorporated a popular segment known as Elmo's World. Upon its 40th anniversary in 2009, the show received a Lifetime Achievement Emmy at the 36th Daytime Emmy Awards. On August 13, 2015, as part of a 5-year programming and development deal, Sesame Workshop announced that first-run episodes of Sesame Street would move to premium television service HBO beginning with season 46, which premieres on January 16, 2016. HBO will hold first-run rights to all newer episodes of the series, after which they will air on PBS member stations following a 9-month exclusivity window, with no charge to the stations for airing the content. The agreement also gives HBO exclusive rights to stream past and future Sesame Street episodes on HBO Go and HBO Now, assuming those rights from Amazon Video and Netflix. On August 14, Sesame Workshop announced that it would phase out its in-house subscription streaming service, Sesame Go, as a standalone service. The service will remain in operation, likely with its offerings reduced to a slate content available for free or serving as a portal for Sesame Street's website. The deal came in the wake of cutbacks that had affected the series in recent years. The changing viewer habits of American children in the previous 10 years, and Sesame Workshop's dependence upon revenue from DVD sales. Format. From its first episode, Sesame Street has structured its format by using a strong visual style, fast-moving action, humor, and music, as well as animation and live-action short films. When Sesame Street premiered, most researchers believed that young children did not have long attention spans. Therefore, the new show's producers were concerned that an hour-long show would not hold their audience's attention. At first, the show's street scenes, the action taking place on its set, consisted of character-driven interactions and were not written as ongoing stories. Instead, they consisted of individual, curriculum-based segments which were interrupted by inserts, consisting of puppet sketches, short films, and animations. This structure allowed the producers to use a mixture of styles and characters, and to vary the show's pace. By season 20, research had shown that children were able to follow a story, and the street scenes, while still interspersed with other segments, became evolving storylines. We basically deconstructed the show. It's not a magazine format anymore. It's more like the Sesame Hour. Children will be able to navigate through it easier. Executive producer Arlene Sherman. Speaking of the show's restructuring in 2002 upon recommendations by child psychologists, the producers initially decided that the show's human actors and Muppets would not interact because they were concerned it would confuse young children. When the CTW tested the appeal of the new show, they found that although children paid attention to the shows during the Muppet segments, their interest was lost during the street segments. The producers requested that Henson and his team create Muppets such as Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch to interact with the human actors, and the street segments were reshot. Sesame Street's format remained intact until the show's later decades, when the changing audience required that producers move to a more narrative format. In 1998, the popular segment, Elmo's World, a 15-minute-long segment hosted by the Muppet Elmo, was created. Starting in 2014, during the show's 45th season, the producers introduced a bonus half-hour version of the program. The new version, which complemented the full-hour series, was both broadcast weekday afternoons and streamed on the Internet. Educational goals. As author Malcolm Gladwell has stated, Sesame Street was built around a single, breakthrough insight: that if you can hold the attention of children, you can educate them. Gerald S. Lesser, the CTW's first advisory board chair, went even further, saying that the effective use of television as an educational tool needed to capture, focus, and sustain children's attention. Sesame Street was the first children's show to structure each episode, and the segments within them, to capture children's attention, and to make, as Gladwell puts it, small but critical adjustments to keep it. According to CTW researchers Rosemarie Truglio and Shalom Fish, Sesame Street was one of the few children's television programs to utilize a detailed and comprehensive educational curriculum, garnered from formative and summative research. The creators of Sesame Street and their researchers formulated both cognitive and affective goals for the show. Initially, they focused on cognitive goals, while addressing affective goals indirectly, in the belief that doing so would increase children's self-esteem and feelings of competency. One of their primary goals was preparing very young children for school, especially children from low-income families, using modeling, repetition, and humor to fulfill these goals. They made changes in the show's content to increase their viewers' attention and to increase its appeal, and encouraged co-viewing, to entice older children and parents to watch the show by including more sophisticated humor, cultural references, and celebrity guest appearances. After Sesame Street's first season, its critics forced its producers and researchers to address more overtly such effective goals as social competence, tolerance of diversity, and non-aggressive ways of resolving conflict. These issues were addressed through interpersonal disputes among its street characters. During the 1980s, the show incorporated the real-life experiences of the show's cast and crew, including the death of Will Lee and the pregnancy of Sonia Manzano, to address affective concerns. In later seasons, Sesame Street addressed real-life disasters such as the September 11th terrorist attacks and Hurricane Katrina. The show's goals for outreach were addressed through a series of programs that first focused on promotion and then, after the first season, on the development of educational materials used in preschool settings. Innovative programs were developed because their target audience, children and their families in low-income, inner-city homes, did not traditionally watch educational programs on television, and because traditional methods of promotion and advertising were not effective with these groups. Funding. As a result of Cooney's initial proposal in 1968, the Carnegie Institute awarded her an $8 million grant to create a new children's television program and established the CTW, renamed in 2000 to the Sesame Workshop. Cooney and Morissette procured additional multi-million-dollar grants from the U.S. federal government, the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations, CPB, and the Ford Foundation. Davis reported that Cooney and Morissette decided that if they did not procure full funding from the beginning, they would drop the idea of producing the show. As Lesser reported, funds gained from a combination of government agencies and private foundations protected them from the economic pressures experienced by commercial broadcast television networks, but created challenges in procuring future funding. After Sesame Street's initial success, its producers began to think about its survival beyond its development and first season and decided to explore other funding sources. From the first season, they understood that the source of their funding, which they considered seed money, would need to be replaced. The 1970s were marked by conflicts between the CTW and the federal government. In 1978, the U.S. Department of Education refused to deliver a $2 million check until the last day of CTW's fiscal year. As a result, the CTW decided to depend upon licensing arrangements with toy companies and other manufacturers, publishing, and international sales for their funding. In 1998, the CTW accepted corporate sponsorship to raise funds for Sesame Street and other projects. For the first time, they allowed short advertisements by indoor playground manufacturer Discovery Zone, their first corporate sponsor, to air before and after each episode. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader, who had previously appeared on Sesame Street, called for a boycott of the show, saying that the CTW was exploiting impressionable children.